Japan is punishing people for getting too fat. The government has imposed annual checkups for health insurance customers, and if they put on weight, they have to pay a penalty.
As home to one of the world's biggest fish markets, Japan's long held a reputation for good health. For decades, it's accredited its longevity to a simple diet of fish and soup. But alarm bells are starting to ring as a familiar pattern emerges. Just like the US and Australia, it seems Japan is suffering from having too much of a good thing. Calories, that is. 10% of the population is obese, and at least 17 million have type 2 diabetes. Heart disease, stroke and high blood pressure are also at all-time highs. It has the nation's health experts searching for a solution. The Dietetic Associations launched nutrition campaigns to fight a growing preference for fast food. But in a high-pressure lifestyle, convenience and cost matter. These buyers tell me the salmon's so popular today, the price was driven very high. But they're quick to assure me it's delicious and great for my health. Fish is a staple of the Japanese diet. It's eaten at almost every meal. And in a population of 130 million people, that all adds up to big business. Even bigger business is the health insurance game, eyeing the nation's weight-related problems. That expense might be a saving grace. It now comes with a government-imposed annual checkup.
We have made these to be mandatory or obligations of the insurers.
If clients don't maintain their weight, their premiums will increase. It's a harsh strategy, but it's hoped striking at the hip pocket will save their waistlines. In Tokyo, Amber Muir, 10 News.
Japan has perfected a system to tackle childhood obesity. It involves a special school lunch routine where the students help in the preparation.
Waving the green and gold, these Japanese school children make a case study for Australia. As 10 revealed last week, they're battling many of the same weight-related health problems we have here. Only in Tokyo, that's being addressed with a disciplined approach. It begins with a calorie-controlled diet imposed by the school. Staff cook the meals on site every day and the students hand them out at lunchtime. Food from home is banned to ensure maximum benefit. Every tray includes soup, rice or noodles, fish, vegetables and fruit and a dairy product. Only minor exceptions are made for those with noted food intolerances. The student involvement is a lesson in itself about nutrition, turning a boring lecture into child's play. But the proof's in the eating, as I soon found out, invited to join a class of 9-year-olds. One of my new buddies explains the various dishes, from rice to salad.
白いご飯です。
そうですか？これは？
これはサラダと5枚です。
Ah, he says it's tasty, but his favourite food is still
ハンバーグです。
ハンバーガーですね。Hamburgers. But that's okay now and then if you're burning energy like these guys. Even Puff the Magic Dragon is an excuse for a workout here. It seems drastic, but the school's determined to break the cycle of obesity. And these students are certainly happier for it. In Tokyo, Amber Muir, 10 News.
To Australia now, where that government's war on terror has yielded the first conviction of a suspect accused of planning terrorist attacks. Network 10 covered the story.
Fahim Lodi is a married father of 2 who migrated to Australia for work opportunities as an architect. But it wasn't long before he raised suspicions that he was in Sydney to destroy infrastructure, not create it. Lodi had been downloading aerial photographs of key Defence Force sites from the internet and collecting maps of the National Electricity Network. He told police the pictures were for business purposes, but his colleagues said the research had nothing to do with his job as a draftsman. Of more concern were order forms for chemicals, along with a notebook of recipes to turn the ingredients into explosives. They were found in a search of his home, along with fanatical videos which implored Muslims to wage war against the West. And then there was his friendship with French terror suspect Willy Brigitte. While each piece of evidence on its own could be innocently explained away, Prosecutors told a trial in Sydney that in combination, they added up to a deadly plan to bomb the city. The most likely targets, a Defence Force zone or the electricity supply grid. Lottie's lawyers claimed the case was cooked up to play on the community's fears about terrorism and prejudice against Muslims post-September 11. But the jury disagreed, finding Lottie guilty of 3 out of 4 charges of planning terrorism. There have been 2 high-profile terrorism cases in Australia since the laws were introduced in 2003. A Perth man was jailed for conspiracy and a Melbourne man was convicted of profiting from a terrorist organisation. But Lottie is the first person to be found guilty of actually preparing to attack. The federal government is pleased by the outcome.
I can generally say that this is a demonstration that our new anti-terrorism laws are strong, they're effective and they're working.
Obviously the evidence being there and the jury having found him guilty, I welcome that outcome.
Since his arrest, Lottie has been forced to wear an orange prison suit reminiscent of Guantanamo Bay. And it may be some time before he'll ever wear ordinary clothes. 2 of his offences carry a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. In Sydney, Australia, Amber Muir for CNN World Report.
Welcome back. You're watching 10's Morning News. An ophthalmologist from the Gold Coast is doing his bit to prop up the ailing health system in the bush. He flies his own plane at his own expense to visit patients up to 1,000 kilometres away.
As dawn breaks, Dr Peter Novakovic prepares for a busy day treating patients, only they're not in his Tweed Heads private practice. They're 900 kilometres away in Cunnamulla in outback Queensland. It's a trip he plans with surgical precision 6 times each year, leaving his successful business to help those in isolated regions desperate for health care. These days, flying doctors are a remote community's best chance at access to specialists, but Dr Novakovic is one of very few who makes the trip off his own bat and not as part of a funded program. He arrives to very different surrounds from his Gold Coast home. Already there's a queue of patients in the local hospital, but no complaints about the wait. They know they'll all get their chance and are simply grateful Dr Novakovic is here.
What do you know, Peter? Hey? What do you know? I don't know, probably even less than you, I reckon.
Frank Kitey Burns is having his sight checked for deterioration as a result of his diabetes. It's a common problem among the Indigenous community, and it would go unchecked if it wasn't for the doc. How important is it to you to have a specialist like Peter fly in to see you?
Well, he's not only a great man to talk to, you just know that if there's, something going wrong, that, you've got someone there, a professional person to deal with it, to tell you, this is how it's got to be done.
Other locals, too old or frail to travel long distances, make up another vulnerable group. But today, the news is all good for 83-year-old Evelyn Guida.
No problem with the driver's licence, everything looks all right there.
In these parts, there are no traffic lights anyway. Next up, some minor surgery in the operating theatre. It's for an 85-year-old who only realised he had eye problems after driving to Cairns, a cool 1,500 kilometres away.
We'll disinfect all the germs that kill them all.
They've now finally been addressed, and today's procedure is to fix a sagging lid. For that, the doctor needs all hands on deck. In the bush, that means even putting a bumbling journalist to work. The patient remains remarkably calm.
Might need a few swabs there, Lisa.
And before long, he's patched up and ready to talk again.
It's amazing. To get this done here, well, I didn't know they could do anything with it. I just thought I'd have that all the rest of my time. But he had one look, he said, I can fix that. And that's marvellous. I only live across the road. And, where before you'd have to go 1,000 k's.
And all covered by Medicare too. This trip is not about money for the doctor. In fact, he's the one out of pocket $1,000 for each day he's away from his business.
Coming from the country myself and having, probably suffered as a result of the lack of medical infrastructure, I've always thought it'd be a good thing to sort of combine skills as a doctor and as a flyer, pilot, and also the passion, and not only the skills as a pilot, and sort of, you know, sort of figured that this would be a win-win situation for everybody.
The great appreciation the locals show is reward enough. The stoic outback characters prove a refreshing change from the Palm Beach crowd too.
I sort of feel privileged actually to have been experienced firsthand some of that sort of, in a way I said, sort of leftovers from the pioneering days of our country.
Danny Guider is one of them, and determined to preserve those days gone by with his wood carvings. He makes models of scenes from his life, and the local hospital hasn't missed out. A microcosm of Cunnamulla life under a Perspex lid. Outside, he shows how it's done, filing away for hours on end, even with a patched up eye. Everyone agrees the town's history is its charm, but the local mayor knows it desperately needs services like the Flying Doctor to give it a future too.
We're very proactive in terms of trying to attract new industry and new services to our shire. And the two key services which investors and future or potential residents look at is health and education. So if you don't have the capacity in those areas, it really puts you behind the 8 ball in terms of attracting investment as well.
20 or 30 patients later, the doctor they call the Eye Man packs up and prepares to leave for his next port of call 200 kilometres away. The more eyes he treats, the more he sees how much still needs to be done. But he'll get there one patient at a time. In Cunnamulla, Amber Muir for 10 News.